Hello, everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? Figure we'll start a little early. I was going to start at 11:15, but I got everything ready on time. So today we are definitely for real starting a new thing because I am just sick and tired of the piece we were working on before. Which is not to say we'll never come back to that, but for now, I just want to do something new. So lots of stuff that I want to talk about in the news going on out there. So this will just be sort of, I think, you know what, I'm just going to sketch for a little bit and then we'll see what it turns into, right? So anyway, folks, this week I want to talk about basically Christian fascism, right? Now, when you say Christian fascism, that's kind of a catch-all term, right? When most people say that, they just usually mean um, sort of like, I guess you would say, evangelical, um, you know, conservative Christians. You know, the ones that are very slowly turning our country into a, theocratic, conservative, right-wing Christian state, right? And these people have been in the news a lot lately with the overturning Roe v. Wade, with a lots of um, the pedo jacketing against gay and trans people, lots of like anti-trans, anti-gay laws being passed in the South, stuff like that, right? So, excuse me. And I want to talk a little bit about this because the Texas GOP has released their um, party platform for 2022. And it kind of demonstrates what happens when basically Christo-fascists take power, right? It's a very good sort of barometer. Not well, I guess not barometer is not the right word, but it's a very good kind of outline of what basically these people want to do to the entire United States, right? And here's the thing about this, right? So it's not like Christian. I guess you would say Christian dominionism is what this is. So when most people think this, it's like what it really is Christian dominionism. So we did an entire stream on Christian dominionism about maybe 6 months ago. Um, Christian nationalism, that's the same thing essentially as Christian dominionism. It's the idea that the United States was created solely by Christians and for Christians and only for Christians. And um, anyone else who's not a Christian, the Constitution doesn't apply to you, right? So, you know what? That looks a little shitty. Let's erase some of that. Oh, wow, it erases like a pencil, too. Okay, well, that's a little annoying, but that's okay. Um, this is the first time that I've like messed around on Kitra using the pencil sketchy tools. So this might be a little bit of a learning experience here, right? Let's see. So yeah, Christian nationalism, I guess, is how you would describe this, right? And what is Christian nationalism? So just a very, very quick recap of Christian nationalism. Um, oh, the move tool. Which one of these is the fucking move tool? That one? Pan tool? No. Which one of these is the move tool? Let's see, this is... Okay, it says this is the select shapes. This is edit shapes. Where the fuck is move? See, I gotta get used to this. I still... God damn it. Select shapes. Okay, you probably want the move tool. Alright, tools. Where's... That's what I want to do. I want to move this a little bit up, but I don't see where move is here, right? That's some kind of vector shape thing. Is it this thing? Ah, there we go. Okay. See, folks, I'm slowly learning this. Slowly learning this program. Anyhow, so Christian nationalism, it's been around in the country basically for a very long time. There's always been people in the country who have sort of had this idea, right, that you know, that Christians are the only ones who have rights. That's basically what it is, right? And but the modern Christian nationalism movement got started in the 1970s. Um, and before 1970, before like the late 60s, the early 70s, Protestants were not really much of a political, they weren't really politically active. You didn't have the sort of like, Christian coalition type, um, you know, type of movements out there, and you didn't have politicians that specifically catered to them and stuff like that. And it was so right around in the 70s, they started kind of taking, I guess, entering into political circles. This is right around the time also when after Roe v. Wade happened, a couple of politicians and conservative Christian nationalists essentially figured that they could turn that into a wedge issue. Because before that, abortion wasn't really something that Protestants cared much about. It was more for the Catholics, right? Catholics were anti-abortion. Protestants didn't really give a shit. So that's another, it's essentially the entire Christian American Protestant opposition to abortion is manufactured. I mean, it's become ingrained in the culture now, in conservative American Christian culture. And it's even like around the world, it's not even, even Protestants in Europe and shit don't really give a shit that much of a shit about abortion either. It's like basically the opposition to that started in the United States, right? Um, and anyway, so they were called, Christian nationalists or Christian dominionists, right? And the word dominion, it's a reference to the King James Bible rendering of Genesis 1:28, where it says, let me just read from this. It says, "And God blessed them and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." Right. So this is where Christian dominionism came from. And so for this reason, dominionists believe that God has given them a charge to basically rule the earth, that the earth belongs to them, that it's up to them to hold it in lieu of Jesus Christ coming back and finally making Donald Trump emperor or something, right? And I wish I was kidding about that, but I'm not. Yeah, let's make this a little bit bigger since we're just sort of doing an outline here. Yeah, that looks like crap too. Anyway, so yeah, there's a form of Christian theocracy called theonomy, which is what they endorse, right? And this is sort of this is where they say that only Christians are citizens, where the Constitution only applies to Christians. Not only that, but it's also this idea that they're going to place people who are not just like Christians who are in their orbit inside of high positions of power in the government, in corporations, in non-governmental organizations, stuff like that. So the idea is that the people running the show behind the scenes, like at every level of government, at every important company, and that kind of thing, are all Christians, and then that way they can sort of enact policies that conform to their worldview. So even if, for example, something like abortion is legal in the country, they'll enact policies which will make it virtually impossible to get abortions in your state. And that's kind of what you saw before Roe v. Wade was overturned. For example, in Missouri, even before the ruling 2 weeks ago, there was only one working abortion clinic in all of Missouri. For example, and then also in same thing in I think it was Montana. I think Montana has like less than 5 abortion clinics, shit like that, right? So it's like there was already. So even though it's like the law says one thing, they've positioned people in power in order to basically enact their will on people, like in defiance of the law. You know what I mean? Then they say, and they would do this in the way of like passing regulations, like your abortion clinic has to have a ceiling which is 40 feet high, shit like that. There has to be a fucking psychologist on staff and all this other shit that has nothing to do with like the medical procedure. And you have to have like 16 doctor visits before you're allowed to do it, that kind of thing, right? So, and you can just kind of take that and extend it to the entire rest of the country. You know what I mean? And it's not just at the national level, it's at every level of government, everywhere. We're starting to see that same kind of thing in school boards, in local town, like city councils. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So it's pretty much that's the plan. And like that's no coincidence, right? Like for example, why you're seeing like Proud Boys and shit show up at like fucking school board meetings, right? That's not a coincidence. That's all part of the idea is like they are trying to capture the government at every level, including local levels, so that it's like they're able to basically fucking enact their will on everybody, right? So you're starting to see, for example, the results of this, right? We're seeing already the results of this playing out in all around the country. There's one news story that I want to bring up here that I saw and I thought I should share with you all. Let's see. Let's do this. Let's turn on my laptop window. Let's make this a little... Actually, we don't need to make that small. This is The Hill. 10-year-old girl denied abortion in Ohio. So, by the way, I messed with my audio for this stream, so if it's too loud, let me know. It's like a new headset, so I might not... the mix might not be the best. So if it's like all loud and scratchy and shit, just let me know. Anyway, 10-year-old girl denied abortion in Ohio. So I wanted to read a little bit of this. A 10-year-old girl was denied an abortion in Ohio after the Supreme Court ruled last week that it was overturning Roe v. Wade, demonstrating the tangible impacts of the High Court's decision on having patients seeking access to medical procedure. A child abuse doctor in Ohio contacted, Dr. Caitlin Bernard, an obstetrician gynecologist in Indiana, after receiving a 10-year-old patient who was 6 weeks and 3 days pregnant, the Indianapolis Star reported. How does a 10-year-old girl get pregnant? Is she going out to nightclubs and coming on to guys and like bringing them home in the middle of the night and making a bad decision to not use protection? Or is it quite likely, far, far, far more likely, that she is being sexually abused? And that's the thing, folks, right? When you see reports of incest, it's usually rape, right? So they always say like, oh, this law makes no, when they talk about abortion laws, they always say things like, well, this law makes no exception for rape or incest, right? You can usually just take incest out of that. It should just be this law makes no exception for rape because, it's usually always rape when it comes to, instances of incest, right? because it's always a small child who's being abused by an older family member, right? Now, there is, of course, actual incest, consensual incest out there between adults, and we as a human species don't want to admit that actually happens, but it does. It happens, right? But those are not the cases we're talking about when it comes to access to abortion. The cases we're talking about here are usually children who are being, you know, molested by older family members, right? Such as the case here with a 10-year-old girl who was 6 weeks pregnant. How do you think she got pregnant? Like I said, do you think she went out with her best friend, got pregnant, or do you think it was someone older who is taking advantage of her in one way or another, right? The idea that in such a case you would force someone to bear the child is morally repugnant, and in my opinion just perpetuates the abuse. The girl's already been abused once, and now the state is going to ensure that her abuse continues by forcing her to carry a child, right? Let alone the fact that she's 10. Giving birth might actually kill her. That's another discussion entirely. Anyway, that patient is now heading to West Indiana, given that an abortion ban in Ohio, which prohibits the medical procedure when fetal cardiac activity begins around 6 weeks, had become effective quickly after the High Court issued its decision. Right. I have read another article here saying that the girl got the abortion. She was able to go to Indiana. She was able to get the abortion. So in this particular case, it looks like it worked out. But this is just one case. Here's the thing, is that you hear about this once, right? And you don't know how many other cases out there are happening that we never hear about, right? A little bit of bad news here at the end of the article. Indiana could soon find itself passing its own abortion law later this month, given that special session has been scheduled for later in July and the legislatures were expected to touch on a ban in the medical procedure. So there you go. And that's a case, Ohio law, zero ability for anyone to get an abortion in any case whatsoever, right? Even in the case where a 10-year-old girl is sexually abused and becomes pregnant through the use of abuse, right? Absolutely repugnant. It's absolutely repugnant, yet Christians are doing. And here's the thing, right? Pretty much, the entire country is in support of these, at least that allowing for that case, right? For the cases of rape and abortion. I mean, you could make an argument somewhere, which I still think is bullshit, but it is, I think, a valid argument to say, oh, well, if you want to get an abortion, whatever, blah, 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 you should just use birth control, etc., etc. But if you allow for, cases like this, cases where the mother's life is in danger, cases where, someone's raped or whatever, it's still, I think, wrong and bullshit, right? But at the same time, that's I think, much more defensible position than just, banning it in all cases, right? But that's not good enough. It's like, no, the Christians, it's not good enough. They have to impose their will completely. And if you were to ask any given, conservative Christian why they do this, it's because the baby's innocent or whatever stupid fucking shit that is, right? It's kind of, it's evidence that it shows to me that the people who enact this law have not actually thought about the consequences of what they actually believe, right? And I don't really expect that because people who are overly religious don't really need to think. They just need to believe. You see what I mean? Like, that's kind of what religion's for. Religion is there to remove from you the consequences of having to think for your actions. So all you have to do is obey. Yeah, that doesn't look right. We need to make the horns much bigger, right? So anyway, here's another funny story that I thought you guys might get a kick out of. Let's turn on my window again. Oh, I'll put these down in the link in the chat for you guys if you want to read them for yourself later. Pregnant Texas woman driving in HOV lane told police her unborn child counted as a passenger. I thought this was funny. So, is an unborn fetus a human being in the eyes of Texas traffic laws? A pregnant Dallas-area woman argued as much to police officers after recently being cited for driving alone in the HOV lane, according to a story published on Friday afternoon by the Dallas Morning News' Dave Leiber. Right. I'm assuming HOV lane means, like carpool lane. In California, they call them carpool lanes, and you can drive in it as long as you have more than one person in the car, and if you don't, you get like a fucking, $800 ticket or some ridiculous shit like that. Of course, that doesn't stop people from driving in them when they're alone. Leiber reports that Plano resident Brandy Batone was driving along U.S. Highway 75 en route to picking up her son when she found herself at a checkpoint facing a citation for using a high-occupancy vehicle lane while alone in her car. Okay, that's what it stands for here, high-occupancy vehicle in Texas. All right. I was driving to pick up my son. I knew I couldn't be a minute late, so I took the HOV lane. As I exited the HOV, there was a checkpoint at the end of the exit. I slammed my brakes and was pulled over by police. Patone said officers asked her if there were any more occupants inside her vehicle. Pregnant with her daughter, Patone told the officers her unborn child was in the vehicle with her, according to Leiber. Pointed to my stomach and said, "My baby girl's right here. She is a person." However, the officers were not buying it. He said, "Oh no, it's got to be two people outside of the body." That's really funny, because Texas is one of the states that, instantly banned abortion, right? Was even trying to ban it even before the ruling came down. So it's perfectly okay to force someone to have a child, right, and to treat a little baby teeny weeny fetus as a full child with a full person with rights and all that shit. But when you try to take advantage of some of those rights, nope, doesn't count. I always really like that. I just thought this was funny. Of course, obviously, I agree with the cops in this case, too, because, a fetus is not a child. A fetus should not have rights. And it just kind of goes to show, here's the link to that one, if you guys want to read that. And then here's the link to the other one, 10-year-old girl. I'm sure you guys have, this one was in the news for a bit, so I'm sure you all heard about the 10-year-old girl one. But just to be consistent, there's the link to that down in the chat as well. Right. Go ahead and close those things. Yeah, it, was always very, I think it's just very hypocritical, right, to just really goes to show where their mind is at. It's like, well, it's not internally consistent at all, right? If it was consistent, then they would say, okay, your child is a child. It has rights, right? And those rights are, then you should be able to use those rights in all the other things. Like, can you, for example, say, take a fetus off on your taxes as a dependent? Can you do that? I'm willing to bet you that you cannot. I'm willing to say that if you were to try to do that in Texas, they would tell you to go piss up a rope, wait till the kid's born. Well, how come I gotta wait till the goddamn kid's born? If I get an abortion, I go to jail for murdering it, but I'm not allowed to take it off my taxes. It can't be a dependent. So why is that? Does it have rights or does it not have rights? One or the other. Let's be a little consistent here, folks, right? I think that's something that bears opinion, and ultimately it's because it doesn't have rights. And I think one by one, all of these, something like this, cases like this are going to go through the courts, right? And one by one, they're all going to get struck down. right? And they're all going to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to strike them down. And it'll just show that there is no actual logical or legal basis for treating fetuses like they have rights, you know? And it will just kind of expose it a little more about, how this is all just people imposing their religion on other people. But the Supreme Court will not overturn it, not until a few of the people that are on the court kick the bucket in 30 or 40 years. So just this is all I'm trying to say is this is what we're facing for quite possibly the rest of my life, at least. Some of you out there who are a little bit younger, you might be 50 or 60 when, abortion becomes legal again everywhere in the country. So it'll happen one day, just not for 30 fucking years. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen because people don't vote, These are the consequences of people not getting out there and voting. Anyway, so yeah, this is basically what Christian dominionism, Christofascism is what I like to call it, but Christian dominionism is the more, descriptive political name or whatever, right? This is Christian dominionism in action, Christofascism in action, right? Remember, according to these people, non-Christians are not citizens, so non-Christians don't get a right to vote. They don't get the protections of the Constitution. So, according to people like John Doyle and Amy Coney Barrett, right, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and other people, non-Christians don't get those protections. Non-Christians don't have freedom of speech. Non-Christians don't have freedom of religion. Non-Christians don't get... So when they, for example, pass a law saying that, schools are allowed to not just allowed to have prayer in schools, but that it can only be Christian prayer. And then when they eventually, what they really want to do is pass a law making that shit mandatory, right? And they'll try to do it too, right? Because they have their allies in the Supreme Court now. And when that happens, that's their understanding is that, well, their understanding is that you don't have freedom of religion. So that means you don't have freedom from their religion. That means they're allowed to impose their religion upon other people in public spaces, and you don't have the freedom to object to that. If you want to be in public school, for example, you'll have to go through the prayer. This is the mentality. This is like what they want. People like John Doyle and Marjorie Taylor Greene and fucking Clarence Thomas. This is what they want, right? How many times have you heard that from the far right wing? There is no freedom of there is no freedom of religion, right? There is no separation of church and state, is another thing that they'll say, right? How many times have you heard them say that? Like, constantly, right? So, that's the ultimate goal, is the application of biblical law instead of secular law, right? Anyway. So, why did I bring up Marjorie Taylor Greene? Because she has basically admitted to being a Christian dominionist. She's made videos defending the idea of Christian nationalism. Let me just turn on this thing here. Let's make this a little smaller. Here is a Twitter post here. So apparently Marjorie Taylor Greene makes fucking YouTube videos or whatever. Like, she's got like her own fucking podcast or some shit. I don't know. But this is Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Christian nationalism. Let's go ahead and play this. I need to, let's see, play that.
If Christian nationalism is something to be scared of, they're lying to you. And they're lying to you on purpose, because that is exactly the temperature change that is happening in America today, and they can't control it. They can't control it, and that's what terrifies them the most. You see, if we're going to label it Christian national...
Yes, I admit this. She's correct. It does terrify me. It does terrify me because, yes, I cannot control it. And I think we all have good reason to be terrified of Christian nationalism because it's going to force upon us things that we don't agree with, things that we don't believe in, right? And it's ultimately damaging to, not just our lives and our sanity and our freedom, but actual life on Earth. It is. Okay. It's damaging to life on Earth because people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are very anti environment. She is. She's very against any type of environmental regulations, right? Which is funny because you would think if you actually did believe in a God and you wanted, and you thought that God gave you the earth to hold in his stead, as Christian nationalists and Christian dominionists tend to believe, you would think you would want to take care of that earth because it was part of your charge in order to keep it, in good shape for when he finally comes back and like fucking, you know, kills all the non-believing Jews or whatever, right? Which is what, like in the book of Revelation, that's what Revelation is, right? The book of Revelation is Jesus coming back and killing everyone that doesn't agree with them, which is implicitly, it's like implied to be like, Jews that never converted. We can talk about that one day in a stream, about how I think the book of Revelation is highly anti-Semitic, because it is. But yeah, you would think that it would be in your best interest as a believer, like if you truly believed in this shit, to keep the earth as clean as possible, right? But they don't do that. They specifically enact policies on purpose in order to pollute, you know. And they do this because it pisses off the liberals. This is why. That's the only reason why. Because pissing off liberals is more important to somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene than having a sustainable food supply, than having an atmosphere that isn't heating up, right? Than actually having biodiversity in animals so that maybe one day her children or her grandchildren get to see what a rhino looks like in real life and not just on movies or something. Than actually having oceans that are able to sustain fish. See, this is what people don't get when it comes to environmentalism. It's not just about saving the whales and saving saving the spotted owls and having forests so hippies and shit can run around in them naked. It's not just about that, right? Protecting the environment is about sustaining human life. It's about sustaining, populations of food, animals that we use for food, right? Fish, for example, right? It's about sustaining things like bees so that we have agriculture. If there's no bees, there's no agriculture. That means, there's no honey. That means there's no pollinating plants like fucking oranges, right? Almonds, fucking blueberries, like basically anything that tomatoes are pollinating plants, no bees, no tomatoes, right? I mean, goddamn, so these are all things that if we don't sustain these things, it directly impacts human life, right? These are our food supplies we're talking about here. It's not just, keeping the trees open so fucking like Wiccans can like run around them and like smear period blood on it and shit like that. It's not that kind of thing. Even though that's totally fine, I have no problem with that kind of thing. It's like if you want to live in a tree, that's your thing. It's about you need trees for paper, for wood, so that people can build houses, so that you can build buildings, so that you can manufacture things like chairs and tables and shit, and so that you can have paper, so you can have cardboard, so you can have packaging. So when you go to the mall and buy something, it comes in a cardboard box. This is where all this, you have to make these things sustainable, right? So this is why it's important to save trees. This is why it's important to recycle. You know, I mean, you can frame it like this. I'm framing it like this because this is a way that conservatives will understand, right? Conservatives don't give a shit about you or your rights or anything like that, or protecting animals. They don't give a fuck about animals. They don't care about, like, this is kind of like how the environmental movement frames it wrong, right? Because the environmental movement is always like, think of the poor chimpanzees and the you know cheetahs and all this other crap. And conservatives, the middle America types, the Marjorie Green people, the real Americans is like they like to fucking, because they always hijack America. They always hijack patriotism, and we're the only people that we're the real Americans. We're the only people that really matter. Yeah, okay, whatever, right? They don't give a fuck anything about that. Then they will never give a shit about those things. They will never care about those things. What they care about are jobs, right? Jobs and their right to fucking consumer to buy shit in malls. This is why everybody went so fucking crazy over the pandemic, because they had to wear a mask or whatever, right? Because they weren't allowed to go fucking shopping. Okay, that's why everybody got so pissed off. This is why all conservatives were so pissed off over the pandemic. They weren't allowed to go outside. They weren't allowed to go to the fucking mall, you know, and like blow their money on stupid shit. So somebody told them to, and they had to actually do something that was like they had to be considerate of other people for a fucking change instead of having everybody serve them, you know. And so they're not going to care about that, right? What do they care about? They care about making money. So you have to frame environmental problems in such a way that they realize that if they don't fucking do something about this shit, they will not be able to make money. The economy is going to collapse. What are you going to do when there's no more paper? There's no more wood, right? How are you going to serve your hamburger to somebody, right? At fucking McDonald's when there's no more like wax paper to put it in, or there's no more cardboard fucking like packaging to put it in. How are they going to buy it, right? How are you going to like buy something from Amazon if there's no cardboard box for it to come in, right? What's that going to do? You know, oh, you'll still be able to buy it. It'll just cost you 10 times as much because the cardboard box you're getting, the paper is going to be super fucking expensive because the only fucking trees that are left are like in the like Arctic Circle and shit because we like cut down all the goddamn trees. You'll still be able to get fish, if it's not extinct, but the fish will be like $75 a pound and shit because it's being, the last like bits of like, free like fucking wild caught salmon and stuff is being vacuumed up, sold at a premium. And then eventually there won't be any fish. Eventually, like the trees will be gone. And then what the fuck are they gonna do? Right? But they're not thinking about that. That's gonna happen 100 years from now. We'll all be dead, so fuck that. That's the problem, That's the problem. We can't get people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to give a shit about things that happen, that are going to happen after she's long gone. She doesn't give a fuck, right? Why doesn't she care? Because she's religious. She doesn't care because she thinks Jesus is going to come back and fix it all. That's why. This is what I mean when I say religion is dangerous, right? When Christian dominionists and Christian fascists, this is what I mean when I say they're a danger to life on earth. They won't do anything about these problems we're facing because they think that God is going to come back any minute now. After fucking 2,000 years, he's been saying he's going to come back. Just any minute now, he's going to come back. And then he'll just like magically repopulate all the salmon. He'll magically regrow all the forests. He'll magically get rid of all the fucking microplastics at the beach and take all of the plastic straws out of the noses of sea turtles and all that stuff. And he'll get rid of the continent-sized fucking thing of plastic bottles and all that shit. They're an existential danger to the country and the world. Anyway, went off on a tangent there. We were listening to Marjorie Taylor Greene talk about some bullshit. Let's continue with that.
This movement will actually be the movement that stops the school shootings. This will be the movement that stops the crime in our streets. This will be the movement that stops the sexual immorality and teaches children and brings them up in traditional families.
Okay, okay. One at a time here. This will be the movement that stops school shootings. How? How is it going to stop school shootings? The people that are doing the school shootings are part of her fucking movement. So how the hell is it going to stop school shootings? Is it going to take away their guns? Nope. Right? They won't do anything about actual guns. Okay. Now, I know what she's trying to say. What she's trying to say here, okay, well, I don't want to project, right? But this is how someone who isn't an idiot would say what she's trying to say, right? If real Christians don't go on murder sprees, that's what she's trying to say. She's basically using the no true Scotsman argument. The idea that, well, if everybody was an actual moral, real Christian, then there wouldn't be murder, there wouldn't be this or that, right? And obviously, since these guys are going on fucking massacre, killing sprees, then they're not actual Christians. This is what she's trying to say, okay? And if we just got everybody to be a Christian, then they'll all be nice to each other, and everybody will love their neighbor, and they'll just follow the teachings of Jesus, and blah, 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 blah. We just had a shooter at this past, this past 4th of July weekend. There was that shooter that shot 6 people at a fucking 4th of July parade. What state did that happen in again? That was in, where was that? Hang on a second. Let me just pull up something here. 4th of July shooter. It was in Illinois, wasn't it? Highland Park. Is Highland Park in Illinois? Chicago suburb. There you go. So, yeah. It's, just then, 7 people are dead because of that. The person who, the perpetrator in that shooting was a Trump supporter, right? There's pictures of him at a Trump rally. I don't want to talk too much about him because this has literally been top news for the past like 5 days and stuff. So I know that you guys all out there know all about this shooting, But this dude wasn't the only one. This guy is not the only one who you would consider a right-wing Christian, conservative, right? I mean, we had the Buffalo shooting. That guy was a Christian conservative. The one that drove 200 miles or whatever to go to Buffalo so that he could shoot black people at a fucking grocery store. He was a Trump supporter. He was a conservative. You have the dude at the fucking what was it, the Las Vegas shooting or whatever at the country music festival. That guy was a right-wing conservative Christian. So it's just sort of like, I mean, it just seems like a very large portion of the mass shooters seem to be people who would vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene if they had the chance, right? So how exactly is Christian nationalism going to stop school shootings, right? I could be cynical and say that, well, once the Christians take over the country, they're going to outlaw guns for everyone who isn't Christian. I could be cynical and say that because that's most likely what would actually happen. Because remember, Christian nationalists, Christian Christo-fascists, right? Christian nationalists, they don't actually think that you have rights as non-Christians. They don't actually think non-Christians have rights. Remember that. Only the Christians would have a right to the Second Amendment if they were in charge. So is that what she means? Well, she's sorely mistaken about that, because the Christians are the ones who are, the people on her side, the people who believe the exact same shit that she believes are the ones who seem to be doing the fucking mass shootings. That's bullshit. What else did she say? It would stop crime. Yeah, okay. Let's look. You know, here's the thing, right? Crime is higher in red states. All right. People don't like to admit that, but it is, So let's just take a look at, let's see, crime rates per capita map. Crime rates are, here we go. Here's a map that I always like to look at maps and stuff like that, right? This is intentional homicide rate per 100,000 residents in 2020. Okay. Now, if you were to look at this without, if you were to look at just straight up numbers of crime rates, right? The amount of crime that happens in any given state, then you would see that it would be blue states that have more crime, obviously, right? California, New York, right? And that is because more people live in California and New York and the Northeast and along the coast, basically, right? There are more people in California than like the entire Midwest combined. So obviously there's going to be more crime there. But if you look at a better measure is per capita, how much crime happens per, the amount of actual people that live in the state, and you can kind of see how it gives a better measure of how often more crime happens. So this is 2020. So remember, this is at the height of the pandemic. People are stuck inside, and murder rates went through the fucking roof during the pandemic. By the way, people. I guess it shows one thing more than anything is that people don't like their families in the United States. People fucking hate their families, and they need to get away from them and shit. And from a little bit, I can kind of understand that. I understand. There's a reason why I live far away from every other person in my family. I live far enough away that they can't just drop by. They have to make a trip. So, anyway, so I understand that. But let's just take a look. Kind of looks like this area down here, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas, kind of looks like this is where murder went way, way, way up. And then in the blue states like California and Washington and New York and Maine and all that, not so high. A lot less high than these. And what do all these states have in common down here? They are they're in the deep south. They're run by Christian conservative Republicans. So you would think if what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying is true, that because what she's trying to say is that Christians don't murder each other, yet these are the states that are run by Christians. How come there's so much goddamn murder? It's almost like what she's saying is completely full of shit. And then this last little bit where she said that, oh, we'll protect the children and all that. What did she say exactly? Let me just rewind that a little bit here.
And brings them up in
There we go.
and teaches children and brings them up in traditional families and loving homes.
Yeah, that is also bullshit as well, what she just said there. That, of course, is a dog whistle to all the people out there who are pedo-jacketing gay and trans people. That's what she basically did. She just put a dog whistle there. There's no truth to what she just said there at all either. Of course, divorce, for example, because she just said, brings them up in proper families, right? So divorce in Christian families is just as high as in families of other religions. It's 50%. That's across the board for everybody in the United States. When you get married, you have a 50% chance of getting divorced one day. And that doesn't matter if you're a Christian or a Buddhist or a Hindu or whatever, right? That's just the United States, right? There is no group of, I think what it is, Jewish people tend to not get divorced at the same rate as anybody else. And then it's also lower for Muslims as well in the United States. Like Muslims don't get divorced at the same rate. But they still, divorce for them is still pretty fucking high. It's still like 30 some odd percent or some shit like that. And then for Jewish people, it's like 45, right? So it's still gigantically high, right? So that's the first thing. That's total bullshit. Secondly, it's like, you know, how many times have you heard about children being abused in churches? I mean, that's a major fucking problem, you know? It's a gigantic problem in the Catholic Church, right? And even like Protestant churches, even like, evangelical churches. How many scandals have you heard about preachers not able to keep their fucking hands to themselves, you know, for keeping their children or whatever? Or like people or children being sent off to gay conversion therapy camps and then like having sex with the counselors because the counselors there are actually gay and it's all bullshit and they kind of know it's bullshit. Like, how many stories of these have you heard? So it's all complete total horseshit. What she's saying has no fucking basis to it whatsoever. Because if it was the case, if what Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying was true, we would see actual data that showed there would be like in the South, murder would be way lower in the South, right? Crime in general would be way lower in the South and in Texas and in like fucking Montana and shit like that in Wyoming. It'd be way lower there per capita, right? That's not the case. Okay, the numbers of children running away from home would be way lower in these places. That's not the case either. Why do kids run away from home? Because they're being abused, right? Which also often includes not just physical abuse, but also includes sexual abuse as well. That's probably the main reason why kids run away from home, because of to escape abuse, right? Those numbers are not lower in the South. Crime per capita is like the same, if not higher, in some places in the South, right? So it's like, no, there's no proof to it whatsoever. Demonstrate to me that it's actually true, that it happens. The number of mass shootings in the South, like how many of the last like high profile shootings over the last 10 years have happened in Texas? Like a ton of them. They're incredibly common in Texas. There was a story I read a few years ago. Do you remember that? There was like a 30-person shootout in Texas. It was like absolutely bonkers. Let me find that. It was completely bonkers. Like, let's see. Texas 30-person shootout. It was really like bike. There's like these, if I remember right, these two biker gangs. Yeah, here it is. Texas bikers and deadly shootout at Waco restaurant. Right. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before. Oh wait. Yeah, okay, fuck off, BBC. But this was like nuts. I'll put this down in the thing so you guys can read too. This happened in 2015. But basically, what it was is two biker gangs showed up at a restaurant to like have a fucking like peace talk or some shit. And it started, and there was like 30 people, and they started shooting at each other, and it was like 9 people died and 100 arrested. Right. So the incident happened at the Twin Peaks Sports Bar and Grill in a shopping area called Central Texas Marketplace. Police said 8 had died at the scene at a night at a hospital. All were bikers, and at least 18 others were hurt. There were maybe 30 guns being fired in the parking lot, maybe 100 rounds. Can you believe that shit? This is Texas here. I'm going to put this down in the thing for you guys so that you can, like, read this. But it's absolutely fucking bananas. That's absolutely bananas, right? Does that happen in Colorado? Does that happen in Colorado? Does that happen in California? In Chicago, are there, like, gangs, like giant shootouts at restaurants with 30 fucking people and 18 people getting killed and like the cops arresting like fucking 100 people arrested? Like, where were they keeping them, in the fucking parking lot? Were they renting U-Hauls to hold them in? Like, it's absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy, right? How come that's happening in a state where Christians are in charge? Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? If being a non-Christian is so dangerous, how come we don't see shootouts like that every fucking day in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago, right? It's bananas sandwiches insane, you know. And what this person's telling you is the exact opposite of what she's saying is the actual truth. Because religion doesn't stop these things, right? Being religious does not make someone less violent. It does not make someone less apt to go kill somebody. It does not prevent school shootings. It doesn't stop fucking, child molestation. It doesn't lead to outcomes any different than anywhere else in the country. And in some areas, in some aspects, it even leads to outcomes which are worse. Education, for example, right? Teenage pregnancy is way higher in the South, in places like Louisiana and fucking Mississippi and Texas. It's way higher there than it is in California and New York per capita, right? Stuff like that. Teenage dropout rates, the same if not higher. It's complete bullshit, folks. Moving on. She still has a few minutes here. Let's listen what the woman has to say before I shit on it some more.
This will be the movement that protects kids' innocence and nurtures them into responsible adults that grow up to be successful moms and dads wanting to pursue a family of their own.
All right. So, protects kids' innocence. Myself personally, I don't believe in sheltering children. Okay. I don't believe in that. And when I say sheltering children, it's like there's some people out there who will, not allow kids to watch R-rated movies and shit like that until they're fucking 18 or whatever, right? That's kind of what I'm talking about. I don't believe, I mean, yes, okay, you don't allow your 6-year-old kid to watch porn. That's obviously not something you do, right? And if you have like a big scary movie with people's heads getting chopped off, you don't allow your 6-year-old kid to watch that either, right? But I'm a big believer in if a kid wants to look at something and, they should have the ability to determine this for themselves after a certain age. That age for me is 12. I think by the time you're old enough to be in junior high school, you're old enough to realize that fantasy is what you see on TV is not real. That things like cartoons and the Power Rangers and professional wrestling and stuff you see in movies, superheroes and shit like that, monsters. You should understand by the time you're in junior high school, these things are not real. That ninjas are not real. That you can't really pile drive somebody and not fucking kill them. And you should understand these things. And I also think by that time, here's the thing about that. I would not allow a kid to watch porn, of course, obviously, but they are going to be watching it anyway. If any of you out there have children and you are concerned about this kind of thing, and you don't want your kid to be like, spanking the chihuahua or whatever late at night, I'm sorry to tell you that it's already happening. The same kind of way that kids are going to do drugs. That's another thing. You don't want to encourage your kids to do these things, but they're going to do it anyway. Marijuana, for example, right? Your kid will smoke marijuana. That's just going to happen. But if your kid goes to high school in this country, your child will smoke marijuana. It doesn't mean that they will become like a total pothead or whatever, but they will. And I don't think you should try to protect them from that. There are people like who will say that, well, there should be no references to drug use or sexuality in media at all because kids might see it. It's like, no, kids are already going to, not only already going to see it, they're already doing it. Another thing, your kid, when your kid turns 15, 16, 17, they will have sex. They will. It doesn't matter what you do. It's something like 90% of like girls and like 87% of boys have sex by the time they're 18, right? It's really high, you know, and nothing you do, and it's kind of the same across all. Like it goes down slightly depending on how religious you are. It's very slightly. If you're an evangelical, it goes down to like 88% or something like that. It's still incredibly high. The last time I checked, I mean, I haven't seen these. The last time I checked into these stats were like a few years ago, but it's still incredibly high. It's something like 87%, 88% of all evangelical Christians lose their virginity before marriage. You know, most people lose their virginity by the time they're 18 in this country. That's just cultural. That's how it is. And if you're concerned about this, if you're really concerned, if you have children and you don't want them to do these things and you want them to be protected by these things, the best way to protect them is to be open about it and to explain to them what can go wrong and why you should use protection. Like, if you're concerned about your daughter getting pregnant, and as a 16-year-old, instead of trying to hide all references of sex from her in all of the movies and TV shows and shit that she watches, instead you should be open with her and you should be like, hey, if you do this, don't let me catch you, but also use protection every time. If you're concerned about your kid doing drugs, right, then you should explain to them, hey, this is marijuana. This is why you shouldn't be doing it. You're not old enough, right? This is what it can do to you, and you're not gonna fucking go crazy and jump off the bridge the first time you smoke it, whatever. These are the effects. Because they are going to encounter these things. If your child has friends, if your child has normal, like, ordinary friendships with people and they go to parties and shit, they will encounter drugs and sex and alcohol, and they will have the same pressures as everybody else, because when you're a kid, you want to experiment and have fun and you want to learn about these things, and here's the thing about it: the more you try to prevent it, the more you tell them it's bad, the more they're going to want to do it. You know why? Because they're going to want to revolt, and they're going to, in some respect, something is going to tell them on the inside, hey, my dad, my mom really fucking hates this. If I do it, it's going to piss them off, so I'm going to do it. You know, and all it'll take is you getting in an argument with them or something, and then they'll do it as a way to, like, subconsciously get back at you. I'm sure you all remember when you were young how you felt about these things yourself, right? Your kid is going to feel the exact same way that you felt. And a lot of people out there want to defend their children from these things because they had bad experiences with all this stuff. And that's completely 100% understandable. But you have to remember that your kid is not you. You are not your child, right? Your child needs to learn this stuff on their own. So the best way you can protect them is to help them so that they don't encounter the same mistakes you have, right? The more children learn about sexuality, for example, the less likely they are to have unprotected sex. There's a one-to-one correlation with that. When you have sex ed in school, right, and you have access to contraceptives in school, teenage pregnancy rates go down. Okay? I don't know if it's like this anymore. When I was in high school, you could just go to the nurse and get free rubbers. You could get free condoms. They would just give them to you. Right? It was, embarrassing to go ask. But it was because back in the 90s, there was an extremely bad problem with teenage pregnancy in California. And when girls get pregnant when they're in high school, they drop out of school. So instead of, they want kids to finish their fucking high school, like, educations and shit. So they gave away free contraceptives. Lo and behold, the rates of teenage pregnancy went down in California. I don't know where it's at now. I haven't looked it up in a long time. But, you get the idea, right? These are the things that actually work. Christians don't believe in this stuff. They believe in abstinence only, right? They believe in, and why do they believe that? Because that's what their religion says. Even though it doesn't actually say that in the Bible, it doesn't actually say that you should never have sex outside of marriage. It says it is better to. It does not say you will go to hell for having sex outside of marriage. So anybody that tells you that, ask them to cite the Bible verse for you, because it doesn't fucking say that. This is where culture. This is a conservative American Christian culture imposing its own interpretation, its own will on everybody else, right? Bible doesn't actually say anything about drugs either, because there were no drugs. It says something about like I think there's a line about like drunkenness or something, but it doesn't say anything about taking drugs. It doesn't say anything about being trans. It doesn't say anything about like there's like one passage about homosexuality which is taken out of context. All of this stuff that you know the conservative Christians use as wedge issues in order to scare people into voting for them. You know, it has no basis even in their own fucking religion. It's all made up bullshit. That's the other thing. It's almost not really worth arguing on that point though, because you will never get through to them on these points. They don't give a fuck. You know, they don't actually care because they don't actually believe what the Bible says. They believe their interpretation of it, you know. And they're taught to believe that anybody who disagrees with them and tries to reason with them the way that if you were to actually go and argue like from a biblical perspective, if you were to actually go there and argue these things to them like that, they're taught to believe that this is like satanic, and satanic forces would be misleading them. So that's how they'll interpret that. They'll say that your mind is being taken over by demons or some shit. I'm not joking. Anyway, let's let her speak. She still has about a minute left here.
This will be the movement that finally does something about our debt, because it's something that all of us should be ashamed of. It should have never happened. This will be the movement.
That is ridiculous in so many ways, because the Republicans are the ones that caused all the fucking debt. All right? This is irrefutable. It's like, you cannot argue this. Okay? Debt in fucking 1979, before Ronald Reagan took over, was around 500 billion. And they said that, or sorry, not even 500 billion, excuse me. It was like less than like wait, yeah, I think it was. It was like 500 billion. It was extremely low, right? Now you would think 500 billion is a lot of money, but when it comes to the government, that's nothing. Okay. Ronald Reagan is the one that cut taxes. Taxes when Ronald Reagan took over were for rich people were at roughly 70%, right? And now when you say 70% of taxes, it's 70% over $1 million. So you can make $1 million a year, and then if you made 2 million, you would have to pay 70% on that million that you made over the threshold. So it's not like there weren't super duper rich people before Ronald Reagan became president, right? But he cut the taxes way down. The debt went way, way up. It went to like $1.7 trillion under his tenure, right? Then it went up even more when George W. Bush became president, because he invaded Iraq when he should have just fucking left it alone. That's a subject for a different stream. No Iraq war, half the shit that happened over the last 20 years wouldn't have happened, but that's a subject for another stream. Right, so by the time Bill Clinton becomes president, it was somewhere around, I think it was $5 trillion. Somewhere around there. By the time Bill Clinton became, no, it was something like 2.5 trillion, and then by the time Bill Clinton left office, it was 5 trillion, right? 5 trillion is a shitload of money too. Okay. Bill Clinton leaves office in 2000. There is a surplus in the government. Now you go, well, how the fuck can there be a surplus when you have a let's get rid of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Fuck this bitch. I don't want to listen to her remaining 50 seconds here because she's full of shit, but you get the idea. She's basically lying her ass off. I'll put this down if you want to actually see the entire thing for yourself. It's down there in the chat. Dynacat, hey, how you doing? Good to see ya. Um, anyway, so yeah, Bill Clinton leaves. It's 5 trillion. George W. Bush cuts taxes again. So by the time George W. Bush leaves, he cuts taxes, the up to that point the largest tax cut of all time. He leaves, the debt is now roughly 10 trillion. So he doubles it, right? So when Bill Clinton left, there was a surplus in the yearly, what do they call that? The deficit, right? So deficit is how much money is the government is going over every year, right? And Bill Clinton reduced that deficit. There was a surplus, a projected surplus, but a surplus of $500 billion. So if we just would have continued on collecting taxes at the same rate they were in 2000, right, in about 5 years there would be no debt. So that's where we were at before George W. Bush took over, right? Bush takes over, cuts taxes for rich people. Instead of eliminating the debt, it doubles it. So when George W. Bush leaves office, because he cut taxes and then he also started 2 wars without ending either of them, and just dumped this big, and then there's like a huge fucking like economic collapse, which is actually related to the tax cut. We could talk about that some more, but that's a subject for another stream as well. You know, but essentially every time there's a giant tax cut, there's a massive economic collapse a few years later, which is kind of what we're going through right now, huh? So then Obama takes over, is left with 2 wars, a giant fucking you know, pile of debt, right? And a massive economic collapse. And so he basically has to ramp up spending because that's how you get the economy going, is by people having money. You know, the economy runs when there's demand. Well, how does the best way the government can stimulate demand is by spending money and putting money in people's pockets, right? So that's what Obama does, you know, spends money, quantitative easing, shit like that, gives money to the banks, etc., 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 right? Economy recovers. The debt goes up to 20 trillion, but deficit was also lower under Obama as well. He managed to get the deficit under control by the time he left. Deficit was going down. What happens when Trump takes over? Tax cut. Tax cut, right? He did not double the deficit, but he was on track, or double the national debt. But Donald Trump was on track to do so. He, in 4 years, added $7 trillion to the national debt, right? Obama, in 8 years, added 10 trillion. Okay? So, no, Donald Trump did not fucking keep his promise there. Donald Trump said that he was going to eliminate the debt completely. Not even fucking close. So that's complete bullshit. So the evidence shows, this is straight up history. We have 40 years of history when it comes to debt and deficit spending. That shows when Republicans take power, they spend like drunken sailors. When Democrats take power, they rein it in. Partially, they rein it in because the Republicans force them to. Because the Republicans use the debt as a club in order to enact shit that they want. They always do that. Whenever there's a Democratic Senate, whenever there's a Democratic president, you always hear about how the debt's so bad. And you remember these things, the fiscal cliff. Remember the fucking stupid fucking fiscal cliff, and how they wouldn't raise the debt ceiling over when Obama was president, over and over and over. They wouldn't raise the debt ceiling, constantly fighting over the fucking debt ceiling. And remember the sequester? Remember that, we're gonna, under Obama, there wasn't a they didn't pass a budget for fucking 8 years because or 6 years or something because the Republicans would not allow a budget to get passed, so they just had to use supplementals in order to spend, and keep the government running. Remember when Ted Cruz shut down the government because of Obamacare, right? Remember all these things. This is Republicans doing this. All that shit went away when Donald Trump became president. The same way it went away when Bush was president. The same way it went away when Reagan and Bush the first were president. Because they don't actually give a shit about the debt. So whenever somebody tells you that the debt's a tragedy, blah blah blah, and whenever a Republican starts talking about debt, you can just tell them to shove that straight up their fucking ass, because that's complete, total fucking bullshit. They do not give a fuck about the debt. They cut taxes. Cutting fucking taxes does not reduce the debt. It is the opposite. You want to get rid of the debt, you have to fucking raise taxes. That's how you're going to do it. Okay? You're not going to cutting taxes for job creators or whatever. It's bullshit. It's bullshit, and it doesn't work, and it's never worked over the last 40 years. We have irrefutable proof of this. So fuck you, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Anyway, so now it's time to get to the main attraction. What is it, 12:17? We got a couple comments here. Dynacat. That shootout was years ago, pre-Trump, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was. It was, 2015. So it was before Trump, you know. But it was in, the reason I brought it up was because it's in Texas, which is run by conservative Christians and is a conservative Christian stronghold and has been for, many, many years. So when Marjorie Taylor Greene says that, Christian nationalism is going to stop mass shootings, then, you know what I mean? Like, it should stand to reason that a place that's run by Christian nationalists like Texas, and even in 2015, it was run by Christian nationalists, right? That there should be no mass shootings there, right? I mean, if that's what she's claiming, then that's what should actually be happening. But in real life, it's not happening. In real life, there's like more shootings in Texas per capita than in like California, right? Than in Chicago. Like, there might be more in Chicago because of like crime, but I think those numbers are still pretty close. It's like, demonstrate to me how life is better in any place where Christian nationalists, where Christo-fascists are in charge. It's not. It's not better at all. In fact, I think that'll be a good thing for a stream. Maybe next time. Maybe we'll do a stream where we just compare stats of like, quality of life stats, education, college graduation rates, debt. I guess another one would be life expectancy, right? Access to healthcare, stuff like that. We can just do a quick, comparison around the country. And I think you're going to find when we do that it's not significantly better in any state where Christians are in charge. It's going to be the same or worse. I already know that, for example, education is like horrible as fuck in the South, right? Graduation rates and shit like that are like incredibly poor in places in the South. In big cities in the South, it's really shitty, So that'll be an interesting stream. We can actually see whose policies are actually leading to better outcomes in all of these different areas. That's going to require a lot of research, so don't expect that stream to happen for a while. I have to actually do more than 5 minutes of Googling in order to find the right stats, the correct recent stats, because it also doesn't help if it's like, oh, I found this stat, but it's from like 2006. Like, no, dude, you need something like recent, Anyway, Dynacat, I believed in the man from Uncle older than 12. I've never actually seen that. It's like a spy show, right? I don't know. I've heard a lot of. I mean, that's one of those like classic sort of like TV shows that is like I think it's about like spies, right? If I remember, I don't know. I'll have to watch it one of these days, but I know you can get it on like I think it's on. Actually, I think you can just get it on YouTube. Some of the old episodes. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, yeah, the thing is, I didn't believe like here's the thing, right? Me personally, I always kind of knew as a child that this stuff was make believe. I don't really, I never myself had a problem understanding like cartoons were make believe. Like I never thought that the Smurfs were real or He Man was real or Scooby Doo was real. You know what I mean? Same way that I never thought that like you know, I mean, me personally, I never believed in like Santa Claus. I never believed in like angels and demons and Santa Claus. To be honest, I don't think I ever really believed in God, really, as even as a small child. I always kind of thought God was the same thing as like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. Like it was just sort of like stuff, it was just like pretend. That's kind of sort of. I mean, maybe when I was a very small child. Then again, my family was never really religious, like at all. Like I think I've been to church maybe. I'm supposed to be Roman Catholic, but I think I've been to church like maybe like a handful of times my entire life. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I can understand other people who are brought up to believe these things are real. People I can understand people who are brought up to have because that's the thing. In the United States, we're taught to have faith in things. We're not taught to you know use like logic and reason especially when we're small children. Have faith in your parents, have faith in your country, have faith in God, stuff like that. Believe really hard and it'll come. It'll work out. All you got to do is believe. That's what we're like taught to do. Believe in yourself, it'll work out. Study really hard, work hard, and all that shit. The good life will be yours. That's really the same kind of. I don't see much of a difference between saying like believing in supernatural things and believing in a god, and then also believing that like in the American dream, for example. It's the same kind of that's just having faith in your country, having faith everything's gonna work out, shit like that. And it's like no man, you get the best results when you actually work from evidence, right? In everything, in every aspect of your life. If you have to be able to see what works and what doesn't work and then act accordingly. And if you do the same shit over and over, you'll never get anywhere. If you work at a job and you don't make enough money at your job and you're constantly fucking broke, you're never gonna not be broke if you keep working at that same fucking job. You know what I mean? That's the thing. It's like, yeah, okay, it's not that easy. Obviously, I understand. You can't just go out and get your dream job right off the bat. Trust me. I mean, fuck, I was like unemployed for fucking 6 months. I know all about it. But at the same time, if you don't do something to improve your lot, you're gonna stay the same forever for your rest of your life. And people don't understand this because they're taught that all you got to do is work hard and that's all it takes. It's like, no, working hard is not all you got to do. You have to work hard, but you have to also like make moves and be smart, take advantage of fucking like opportunities and shit like that. Don't be stagnant. Always be looking for the next best thing. You know, I have a job that I've been at now for about a year and a half, and it's great. I love it, but I have not canceled I get notifications on my phone of other jobs in my area. I haven't canceled that just so I can keep tabs of what's out there. Number one, but number two, if I see like something that pops up that's way better, maybe I'll take advantage of that. You know, you got to be thinking about that kind of thing, and it's like it's sort of the same way with where we're just taught to believe without actually doing any of the hard work in this country. And a lot of that I really think comes from our religion. We're just taught to believe. It'll just believe really hard and have faith and it'll all work out. Doesn't really work like that, does it? Anyway, why don't we move on to the main since we're at 12:26. We might go a little bit longer here because what I want to do is go through the Texas GOP party platform. Now, I started with this other stuff. I started with these stories about, the girl getting the 10-year-old girl not getting an abortion and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these other things because I wanted to demonstrate what happens when Christian, nationalists, Christian dominionists, right, Christo-fascists. That's what happens when they're in charge, okay? Bad things. Bad things happen when Christian dominionists are in charge. And I want to, let me go to my notes here. I also was going to go to Charlie Kirk, but we're running out of time. This is more important, I think. So let's go to the Texas GOP party platform. Okay, so before we do that, I'll put this down in the chat here if you guys want to read along. There you go. This is the Texas GOP party platform. Let's just turn on the window here. And let's make this a little bit bigger because I'm going to be reading from this. Actually, you know what? We should just make this, well, maybe I'll draw a little bit on the side. Let's see here. Maybe I'll just move that over here like that. Maybe I'll just draw a little bit on the side, but you're probably not going to be able to see me drawing over this. So, actually, you know what? No, why don't we do this? Why don't we make this super big, and then we'll make this window actually smaller. And then we'll put the laptop window underneath, like, we'll put Kitra on top. There we go. Like that. So that way, nope, wrong one. There. So that way you can see me drawing a little bit at the upper right. And then on this side, there we go. So that actually looks pretty good. So you can still see me drawing when I decide to draw. And now we can read the platform and resolutions as amended and adopted by the 2022 State Convention of the Republican Party of Texas. So every state has a party platform for, every political party has a platform, right? These are the things that they believe and policies that they want to enact, essentially, And what it comes from is from back in the day, they would have debates where they would get up on a platform made of wood. And so what they call these the planks of the platform. And that's where that comes from. It comes from the wooden planks on the actual platform that they used to stand on and debate each other with. So that's where this verbiage comes from. Anyway, so this is pretty interesting stuff. Let's make this a little bigger so you can all read it. 2022 platform committee members. Here's all the people. There's the committee. Here's the table of contents. We're not going to go through this entire thing, obviously, because it's like 50 pages long. But I want to read as much of it as I can before I have to, stop because I'm going to pee my pants. All right. Anyway, so preamble, blah, 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 affirming our belief. And so this is the very first sentence I just want to put here because, if you're thinking, how is this relevant? It's because the GOP in Texas are dominionists. They're Christian nationalists. They're Christo-fascists, right? Here we go from the very first paragraph in their party platform. This is something. Now remember, the party platform is these are the principles that every Republican in Texas is basically agreeing this is what they want to enact, right? Affirming our belief in God. Very first sentence there of their platform. We still hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they have endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Throughout the world, people dream of freedom and opportunity. The Republican Party of Texas unequivocally defends that dream. We will find that they are not actually defending that dream. But let's continue. We strive to preserve the freedom given to us by God, implemented by our founding fathers, embodied in the Constitution. How many times are they going to fucking say God in this platform. And I just want to put that there because this is what they're actually. This is what you know. The proof is in the pudding, right? Fucking here. So they're basically Christian nationalists, right? So let's move on a little bit. Principles. Scroll down. Number one. Well, see, these are all paragraph one, but this is the actual principles here, right? So, first principle, right here, because you can see the one in parentheses. The laws of nature and God, the laws of nature and nature's God, and we support the strict adherence to the original language and intent of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitutions of the United States and of Texas. So, you notice that God comes before the Constitution. Keep that in mind, because this is the order in which they want to enact policy. Biblical policy first, Constitution way over there second. The sanctity of an innocent human life created in the image of God, which should be equally protected from fertilization to natural death. So, yep, first off, right off the bat, second plank is enforcing their religion on other people. And it says right there, sanctity of innocent human life created in the image of God. The reason why they want to protect the baby fetuses is because of God. It says it right in their platform. If it wasn't a religious reason, it would say because we hold all life to be sacred, or it would say because we believe fetuses to have rights, the same rights as citizens. It would say something like that. It doesn't even, they're not even hiding the fact. The reason why they want to do this is because they want to get rid of abortion is because of religion. Number three, preserving individual Texan and American sovereignty and freedom. Okay. Four, limiting government power to those items enumerated in the United States and Texas constitutions. Right. As we learned with the recent Roe v. Wade decision, the Supreme Court is currently thinking of getting rid of unenumerated rights. Rights like, say, abortion. They already got rid of that one. Rights like, say, freedom to have loving and sexual relationships with people of the same sex. They want to get rid of that. We talked about that before. The ability to get contraceptives, things like of that nature. Remember Clarence Thomas fell a little bit short. He didn't list the Supreme Court case which decided, of course, interracial marriage because he himself is in an interracial marriage. But here we have the GOP in Texas basically reaffirming the exact same shit that Clarence Thomas said in his decision. Right? That's what that means. Removing unenumerated rights means getting rid of, this is the dog whistle right here. It means getting rid of gay marriage. It means getting rid of sodomy laws. It means getting rid of contraceptives, right? It means enforcing their will through their religion that they believe on everybody else who does not believe in their religion. That's exactly what it fucking means. 6. Self-sufficient families founded on the traditional marriage of a man and a natural woman. So, yep, no gay marriage right there. 7. Having an educated population with parents having the freedom of choice for the education of their children. That's a dog whistle, meaning to get rid of, first off, it's a dog whistle for having the government pay for religious schools, right? And they talk about vouchers and shit like that, educational vouchers. That's basically what that means right there. They basically want the taxpayer to pay for people to go to religious schools, which in real life what that amounts to is they want the taxpayer to pay for white kids to go to private schools where there's no black kids. That's what that really means. That's the real actual motive behind that, is so that they can basically not fund public schools because non-white people go to public schools, right? We could talk about that one day too. That would actually also can require an entire stream by itself because there's a very long history of basically that's where private schools came from. I mean, there were private schools before, Brown versus Board of Education or whatever, right? There were private schools before that, but after segregation got knocked down, attendance in private religious schools shot through the fucking roof. And it was because they were expensive and black people couldn't afford them. That's why, right? And now they want the government to pay for people to go to these schools. They want the government to pay for it. They don't want, because they basically want to put back fucking segregation. That's what it is. But we could, that's a subject for another stream. Also, the other dog whistle contained in this plank right here, freedom of choice for education of their children. The other dog whistle contained in there is they want to be able to not teach evolution. That's what that is. Freedom of choice, right? As it is right now, if you are in high school in pretty much every state in this country, right, evolution is taught in schools. And it's been a very big project on the right wing, the religious right wing, in this country in order to get laws passed that says that either they have to teach intelligent design in science classrooms or that they get to opt out their children for not learn about evolution, shit like that, right? Because remember, it's not about freedom. If it was freedom, they would just say, okay, well, we'll just learn about it, on our own or whatever, because that's the thing. If you just learn about it in school, that doesn't mean you have to believe it. It's not about freedom. It's about control. It's about indoctrination. They don't want their kids to learn about evolution because it contradicts with their belief system. And the kid might suddenly realize that what they're believing is bullshit and then leave the religion. And that's why they don't want kids to learn these things. And not only that, they want to enforce their will on everybody else, because just they themselves, not getting abortions, they themselves not learning about evolution, they themselves like not having sexual ed in school, shit like that. That's not good enough. It's not good enough if they just live separately and like the Bible tells them they're supposed to. The Bible said, be of the world, be in the world, but don't be of the world, etc. Blah, 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 right? That's what it actually fucking says. That's not good enough for them. They have to take it away from everybody else. They have to enforce their will on everybody else. That's really what it's all about. It's all about control. It's about control and making money. Ultimately, it's really all about money, but, that's just my own cynicism talking. Moving on. The inalienable right of all people to defend themselves and their property. The Second Amendment, yeah, of course, it's Texas. A free enterprise society, unencumbered by government interference or subsidies. That's a dog whistle for we want to get rid of environmental regulation, because it's not about really a free enterprise society. It's about companies being able to dump their garbage wherever the fuck they feel like and not being responsible for, destroying the environment or giving people cancer, that kind of thing. And then also, taking away your ability to, negotiate in any way with your employer or to have any kind of rights at all. That's another kind of sort of unreported story about the Supreme Court, is that they're very, very, very pro-business. This Supreme Court is even before the three Trump appointees got, took power here, the Supreme Court was also very extremely pro-business. So it's Who even knows what kind of ridiculous shenanigans are going to happen within the next 40 years that the Supreme Court, I mean, before we know it, we're going to be fucking slaves. Just watch. Just watch, you know. Anyway, honoring all of those that serve and protect our freedom. That's just more bullshit. That's just another fucking meaningless fucking platitude, you know. Support the troops, whatever. If you really supported troops, you wouldn't start wars. Anyway, constitutional issues. Keep our oath to the Constitution. Okay. Let's continue down a few. Preservation of our constitutional republic. I wanted to bring this one up. All right. We support our constitutional republican form of government as set forth in the Bill of Rights. We further resolve that all amendments to the Texas Constitution require a majority of votes in at least 191 counties instead of a simple majority. Right. When it says Republican form of government, they do not mean the Republican Party. Right here. Right. They're not talking about the Republican Party. They're talking about republicanism, which is basically, essentially democracy. The idea that the state is run with the consent of their people. Right. So keep this in mind. This is pretty high on the list. This is the second one beneath keep an oath to the Constitution here. Right. They're saying that they believe in democracy. Okay. Well, that sounds like a good thing. Right. This one right here is counter to democracy. Right. Further resolve that all amendments to the Texas Constitution require a majority of the voters in at least 191 counties instead of a simple majority of the votes. This is the same logic and reason as of why we have a electoral college, right? If you have a democracy and you have you have a population of people and you say you want law A or law B, if 51% of those people vote for law A, then law A should become the law, shouldn't it? Bill number A, I guess. Bill A versus Bill number B. And then if Bill number A gets the majority of votes, Bill number A should become the law. That's what democracy is. More people voted for that one. More people wanted that. That's the will of the voters. And of course, you know, the minority needs to be protected in certain ways, right? You know, we understand that. What does this sentence actually say? This sentence says that there's 191 counties, right? A majority of voters in this many counties must approve it before it becomes a law. Excuse me for a second. Head itches here. Sorry. I'm wearing these headphones for like an hour now. So what does that mean? That means it's not a simple majority of the votes. It means that it means it's counting geography over population. It means the people that live in counties that have a lower population have more control over the law, over what becomes the law, than the actual people themselves, right? The same kind of way that someone's vote in Georgia means more than someone's vote in New York, even though New York has like 30 million people and Georgia has like 5 million people. And conceivably, it should be the majority rules. So the popular vote. More people wanted this candidate over that candidate. This little sentence right here is in direct contradiction to that sentence where they say constitutional Republican form of government. Republican form of government meaning the consent of the governed. This means we're going to pass laws that do not have the consent of the governed. Just wanted to point that out. Enforce the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4. Sovereignty of this state requires the protections afforded under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. Any failing, therefore, authorizes the governor of the state legislature to declare an invasion, which shall be met with the full force of the state. Article 4, Section 4 of the That basically is the part of the Constitution that guarantees every state in the Union a form of Republican government, right? Is what that is. So basically, that's in the Constitution. It says the state must have a Republican government. That meaning that there must be the consent of the voters, right? The consent of the governed in some way. So you have to have democracy. The state has to be a democracy. That's the United States Constitution. So keep this in mind because this is going to pop up later. Even though they just contradicted that right up here, this is going to pop up later. Okay. No foreign law, contract judgment from any foreign state whose laws violate the fundamental constitutional rights. Okay, that's standard shit. Judicial overreach, any attempts by the judiciary to rule in areas not constitutionally granted to the judiciary, including abuses of the Commerce Clause, the General Welfare Clause, and the Supremacy Clause, should be nullified. Any federal enforcement activities do not occur in Texas shall be conducted under the authority of the county sheriff. What does this mean, right? This is a way for them to basically say any federal law we don't like, we're going to ignore, right? The Commerce Clause, the General Welfare Clause, and the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution are law. Commerce Clause means that the um, Constitution is able to regulate trade in between states, right? Any activity that happens over state boundaries is regulated by the Constitution and not by state laws. So that basically means laws like, say, in Missouri, the bill that they're trying to pass that says you're allowed to sue people outside of Missouri for helping someone get an abortion. That should get struck down according to the Commerce Clause because Missouri does not have the ability to tell other people in other states what they're allowed to do. Only the federal government is allowed to do that. General Welfare Clause, basically meaning that it is within the power of the federal government to provide for the general welfare things. So what falls underneath that? Social Security, Medicare, you know. Remember, Republicans want to get rid of that shit too. They really want to get their hands on Social Security money. You know, they've repeatedly tried to invest that into the stock market, shit like that. They really want to get rid of you know, let me move this over here because I can't see if anybody's commenting. Okay, nobody's commenting, but still. They really want to get rid of, Medicare, right? They want to dismantle the welfare state, or what the ridiculous skeleton of what we have that passes for a pathetic excuse of a welfare state. They want to get rid of that because then their rich criminal friends can make money supplying those services that the government does for free or does for far less. That's why they want to get rid of these things. And of course, the Supremacy Clause means that any law that's passed in the Constitution at a national level takes superiority basically over any state law. So that basically means if you have a law that says, for example, in Texas that abortion is illegal, and then at the national level, Congress passes a law saying abortion must be legal in all 50 states, it nullifies the Texas law. And that's why they want to get rid of that too, right? For reasons such as that. Abortion, not just abortion, but for other reasons as well. They want to basically take away any ability of the federal government to pass any law that makes them do shit they don't like. Not just abortion, but also income taxes, lots of shit like the Civil Rights Act is another one that they want to get rid of. That's what this means. That's what this supremacy, nullifying the Supremacy Clause, basically saying abuses of these things, right? Including abuses of the Commerce Clause, General Welfare, and Supremacy Clause. Basically meaning anything that the government passes that we don't like, we're just going to ignore. This is the official Republican Party, planks. This is what the Republican Party stands for in Texas, right? Limiting the power of the Supreme Court. I'm all for that shit. Let's limit the power of the Supreme Court. Okay. Judges don't define the role of judges. Article 3, Section 2 defines the role of judges. We support limiting the power of the Supreme Court by invoking this, by legislating exceptions and creating regulations to limit the cases for which the Supreme Court has jurisdiction. I am all for that. 100% agree with that. Amendments to the Constitution. Uh-oh, here we go. This is what they want to add to the U.S. Constitution. Remember, the United States Constitution, which 5 minutes before they just got finished telling us they have the right to not obey, right? They have the right to nullify if it does something they don't like. This is what they want to add to it. Term limits to 12 years for federal and state offices. 100%. I would actually like to move that down to about 4 years. Federal and state offices. Can we include Supreme Court judges in that as well? I would support that. Oppose packing or enlarging the United States Supreme Court. Oh, that's funny. You just said right here limiting the power of the Supreme Court. How does one limit the power of the Supreme Court? By packing the court. It is legal, and it's one of the ways that the executive branch can check the power of the Supreme Court, right? Is by adding more justices to it. This is, so you remember, we're supposed to have, checks and balances in our federal government. The legislative and the executive and the judiciary are all supposed to have checks and balances with each other, right? One of them is not supposed to get stronger than the other, that's what's happening right now. The Supreme Court is asserting power, which should be without their control. There is no, for example, law in the Constitution that says the Supreme Court is allowed to basically nullify entire laws like this. Judicial review. That actually is not in the Constitution, right? Judicial review is a power that the Supreme Court basically took upon itself. So they could pass a law. Congress could pass a law saying no more judicial review. Or Congress could pass a law saying, okay, judicial review, but not in these cases. Like, not in the cases of, say, human rights or abortion or access to medical treatment, shit like that. They could pass that law, and Supreme Court would have to obey that, right? There's no way. The Supreme Court can't just be like, nope, we're not going to accept that. Nope, they don't have a choice. The Constitution says they have to. And if they don't, that's grounds for them being impeached, right? This is how checks and balances are supposed to fucking work. One of those ways that that's how the legislative branch can check the power of the judiciary is by passing laws about what they are and are not allowed to rule on, right? The way that the executive can check that power is by packing the court, right? Right now, there's a conservative supermajority on the court, because it's 6-3, whatever, right? Joe Biden could put another 4 people on that court, make it 13-6, with 7 people, 7 liberals on the court. Suddenly, it's his way again. 100% legal. I don't know why the fuck he's not doing it now. He should be doing that. Right. So, yep. Texas, the Republicans want to take that away. Why do they want to take that away? Because the current makeup of the court is, of course, a Republican supermajority. It's so when you actually read the shit that they want to do, it becomes incredibly transparent. I mean, it's already transparent just by seeing what's happening in the news and shit, right? But it's incredibly fucking transparent. Just all you got to do is read it. This is what they want to do. Why do they want to do it? Because they're fucking fascists. That's why. Anyway, support the repeal of the 16th Amendment, federal income tax. Of course, that's That's what it really all comes down to, of course, is cutting taxes for rich people. Getting rid of income tax, by the way, would skew taxation far, far, far towards the poor than it would towards the rich people. It's like, and plus it would also like basically lead to the collapse of the fucking federal government. Let's be real there too. No income tax, no federal government at this point because they don't collect enough taxes in other ways. They would have to raise things like property taxes and shit like that. They would have to put more taxes in order to make up for it. So this is a wet dream that, of course I would have said 20 years ago this will never happen, but now I don't know. The Republicans are the crazy people have taken over the fucking insane asylum. They might actually try to do it. D. Support restoring state sovereignty with the repeal of the 17th Amendment of the United States Constitution and the appointment of the United States Senators by state legislatures. What is this? Well, so the 17th Amendment established direct election of U.S. senators. So before the 17th Amendment, which was it was passed in 1913, right? You didn't actually get to vote for a senator. It was your state legislature appointed a senator. So the people actually did not have a hand in it. Was a very indirect way. You could only vote for your state legislature, and then so now you get to actually vote for your senator. Why does Texas want to take that away? Right? Texas wants to take away democracy. Remember, right up here, they said we support a Republican form of government. Right? Right up there. Okay. And then here, state sovereignty requires the protections afforded under Article 4, Section 4, the Republican form of government. Then they come down here and they want to take away that Republican form of government. They want to make it so the state, the state senators appoint, the state legislature appoints your senators. Why? Because they can control through gerrymandering who gets elected to the state Senate and the state House, the state legislature. They can control that a lot easier than they can control gerrymandering for the national level for the U.S. Congress, right? That's why. Because they basically, that's the plan. That's the plan, is to basically set in stone that they will always have a Republican supermajority in Texas, no matter how much the population changes. Everybody keeps saying how Texas is going to be a purple state, and it's not. Why, even though like more people from California and Washington and Oregon and shit are moving to, Texas because they can buy cheap houses there. That's the reason why, by the way. It's because you can buy a house in Texas for like $150,000 and it'll be like this giant house that in California would cost you $800,000, right? Not a joke, not kidding at all. Like you can get like this massively huge big mansion. Then again, you make less money in Texas. That's the other thing too, is that jobs pay less, and like shit like that. Wages are lower. Cost of living is slightly lower, but not by much. And then also your house doesn't have the same kind of regulations. So I know I've heard lots of stories of people buying houses in Texas and then like the foundations are fucked up and shit like that. And it's like, they end up spending all this money to get things fixed because there's no regulations there. You get what you pay for, folks, is what it comes down to. But anyway, that's the idea, is that, they want to make that so that they have permanent control over who gets elected, and then they also have permanent control of who gets sent to the United States Senate by directly removing democracy. Right? That's what it is. It's removing, let's tell it what it is, folks. Removing democracy here. They want to go to an authoritarian model. This is directly opposed in the United States Constitution. I wonder how that plays out. What would actually happen if we actually did get a state like Texas that effectively removed a democracy? How does the federal government step in? Because according to the Constitution, the federal government has the power to step in that case, right? I don't know. I don't know how you would even go about that. I'd have to read about it. I don't, because it's never fucking happened, really. I mean, what do you do? Do they just come in and like take over? Do they sue? I would assume that they sue and force laws to get changed. That's how I would assume it happens. That's an interesting question. I might, I'd like to ask a constitutional scholar about that. You know. Number E, support a change to the 14th Amendment to eliminate birth tourism or anchor babies by granting citizenship to only those with at least one biological parent who is a U.S. citizen. When was the last time you heard about anchor babies? What, 2016? That kind of also goes to show like anchor baby, that's not a problem. That's a bullshit made up fucking. It's more just this is just more red meat being thrown to the Republican base. There's no fucking such thing as like anchor babies. People do not come to the United States just so that they can give birth. And then it's bullshit, you know? It's like if it is a problem, it's such an infinitely small, minuscule problem, that because you don't get anything here. Why it doesn't make any sense. Like if you were to do that, I could understand somebody going to Canada and having a baby because then they get free health care. I can understand somebody going to France or England and having a baby because then they get free education. You don't get any of that shit in the United States. Why do they want to come here and have a baby? Like what? So they can get a job at a car wash or something? So they can get a job like fucking mopping floors or what? Like it's bullshit. It's bullshit. Like basically, this fucking racism is what it is. Let's be real. It's like they're throwing. This is just them throwing a bone to the fucking Tucker Carlson crowd. You know, fucking ridiculous as fuck, dude. Support a constitutional amendment making English the official language of the United States. Of course, more racism thrown in there, right? Moving on. Executive orders. Number 20. We oppose all executive orders, whether by a president, governor, or local official, that go beyond the administration of executive authority and have the effect of legislation. We call upon the Texas legislature or local lawmakers to nullify such executive orders. You cannot nullify executive orders. That is not possible. The only way to nullify an executive order is for Congress or the legislature to pass a law to prevent the executive order from going into effect, or for the courts to do it. You can't just have the officials say, we're not going to, and it also is not somebody like your mayor or your city council can't say, oh, we don't like that executive order that Biden did. We're just not going to enforce that. Doesn't work like that. Right? That's bullshit. Limiting overreaching state government. We recognize that the sovereignty of the state and its citizenry has been imperiled and threatened by the ongoing overreach of state elected officials and agencies. Imperiled, huh? We therefore call for the enforcement of Article 2 of the Texas Constitution, restoration of our liberty by the following. We must repeal and replace Texas Code 418. Texas Code 418 is the governor, by executive order or proclamation, may declare a state of disaster if the governor finds a disaster has occurred. What is this for? This is for COVID-19 restrictions. That's what this is. They want to take away the ability of the government to force people to lock down or wear a mask or anything like that. Right? because of COVID-19. They want to basically remove the government's ability to keep people from getting killed during a public health emergency. So you got to think of it like, why is this? Why are they even saying this, right? Because it's first off, it's another bullshit red meat thing that they're throwing to the hyper super conservatives that watch Fox News and Newsmax and shit like that, and think that like wearing a fucking mask so that you don't spread a deadly disease is communism, right? So that's the first effect. But what you gotta think, what's the practical effect if this actually happened? If this actually happened, then the government, the governor, and would no longer be able to declare a state of emergency, right? So let's say a hurricane happens, right? Let's say there's a blizzard in Texas and 5 million people lose power, like happened, I don't know, last year or whatever, however many million, something, what was it, like 5 million, 10 million people lost power, something like that, right? And then the governor can no longer declare an emergency. The governor can no longer say, you know, get emergency funds for emergency services out there. It costs money to get like firefighters and like police officers and people out to help people. Like, say, if there's a giant wildfire or something, it costs money. You got to pay these people, you know? I mean, yeah, okay, there's volunteers, but no one's going to keep doing it if they're not getting paid for it. If a firefighter is not getting paid, he's not going to show up to work anymore, because why should he? Right? You got to compensate these people. It costs money to when there's a fucking hurricane that happens to hit Texas every year now, right? And you need like rescue workers and shit. You need EMTs, you need ambulance drivers, you need doctors in order to help people who've been affected by the hurricane. You have to pay those people, right? Where does that money come from? It's an emergency. If it's declared a state of emergency, then the governor can get money from the Fed, and then also can use state funds as well that have been set aside for that. If they can't declare an emergency anymore, they can't get that money anymore. People aren't going to get help. They're not going to get the help they need. They won't get the professional. They'll get volunteers and shit. They won't get the professionals that have been trained and stuff to do this for their whole, make a career out of this. The actual people you want to be there during a fucking disaster, they're not going to get those people. Why? Because a bunch of fucking rednecks don't want to wear masks. That's why. Because a bunch of Karens and, rednecks and Karens who fucking have their masculinity threatened by the fact that they gotta wear a mask. They don't want to be slightly inconvenienced into doing the smallest amount of what it takes to help other people. This is what really gets me about all this, because these are all people all say that they're Christians. These are all people that say that they want to go out and help and you should love your brother and all that other shit. And then when it comes to actually doing something that helps people, they shit all over it and do everything they can to fuck it up. This is what really, I think, I don't know, exposed to me, like COVID-19, the pandemic really exposed to me the mindset of these people. Because I always kind of thought that, okay, well, your average Christian person is generally a good person before this. Like, I was very much opposed to, right-wing Christian fascism and shit. But I always kind of thought before that, well, your usual normal person that out there that believes this stuff has the right intention. At least that's what I used to think. I don't think they have the right intention anymore. No, like, anybody who supports this shit is part of the problem. So COVID-19 radicalized me, I guess you could fucking say. Made me go like more left. Fuck these people. Seriously, that's the only way to respond to this, man. Fuck these people, right? Dereliction of duty. Oh yeah, the F. The governor's duty during an emergency shall not be delegated. Of course. Dereliction of duty. Blah blah blah. Okay. Color to deprive. All right, here we go. So this one's worth reading too. The failure by a public official to discharge any duty shall be a violation of the terms of his or her oath of office, which shall constitute a crime upon conviction. This crime shall be punishable by fine or imprisonment, depending on the nature of the offense. I agree with that. Kind of sounds like for example, when that county clerk in Kentucky refused to marry gay people. That kind of sounds like a dereliction of duty to me. And she got fined and imprisoned, so I think I'm on board with that. Any entity or person who acts under the color of federal or state law to deprive a Texan of the rights or privileges ensured by the federal and state constitution shall be liable to the injured parties for redress, including monetary damages and injunctive relief notwithstanding any pre-existing immunities. So that sounds like, on the surface, something you should be able to support, right? What this really is basically that was thrown in there so that someone, for example, who, say, a cop or whatever that enforces a mask mandate, right? Um, according to this, would be thrown in jail because according to their planks, right, a mask mandate would, deprive a Texan of the rights or privileges ensured by the federal and state constitution. That's what this is. This is, although it wouldn't read this way in a court of law, that's what this is for. It's there to basically, this is more red meat to the anti-lockdown crowd, right? Anyway, moving on. Let's see, citizen. Most of this stuff here is actually not too bad. You know, it's all in how you read it, right? There's some shit in here about habeas corpus and some other stuff. There's some anti-census crap, you know, stuff like that. We oppose the Census Bureau estimates of the collection of other, like this one, in accordance with the United States. We support actual count of the United States citizens and oppose the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is, of course, how they take the census. So what the fuck do they mean by the actual count of the United States citizens? Right? This is more Republican bullshit in there. It's so that they can manipulate the census into saying that there's less, Mexicans and more white people. That's what they're trying to fucking say. That's what that's there for. Because they want to be able to mess with the census, and that way they can allocate federal money according to how they want. Right. Here we go. This one is pretty telling. Equal Rights Amendment. We call upon the 88th Texas Legislature to adopt a resolution clarifying that the 1972 ramification of the 62nd Texas Legislature of the proposed Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution was valid only through March 22nd, 1979. Basically saying that we don't support the Equal Rights Amendment. Yep. More stuff like that. So yeah, because women, of course, are a second-class citizen in Texas. Okay. What else we got here? There's a lot more. Basically, there was it. It goes on for a number of pages, and it's worth reading. It's worth reading a lot because there's a lot of bullshit in here about. There's a clause about the Texans reserve the right to secede from the Union if they want to, which of course Texas does not have the right to secede from the Union. But even from what we read, we only got up to about number 30, the 30th plank or so. Even here, you can kind of see this is what the crazies are after. Let's go ahead and stop this for now because I'm getting close to the end, and I have to go to the movies here in about an hour. Right. So, can you guys hear me still? I hope you can hear me. All right, anyway. Should be. Yeah, okay, good. All right. So, yeah, because I'm gonna go see the new Thor movie, so I gotta get going. But let's just, maybe we'll continue this later. You know, let me turn off my laptop window here. Let's turn that off. Okay, put that back on top. So, is that back to where it was? Yeah, okay, good. But yeah, you can kind of see this is what sort of happens when the fox is running the hen house, when the insane people take over the asylum, right? Lots of basic like bullshit, lots of red meat, and then just straight up like anti-democratic, authoritarian, Christo-fascist horseshit. Right? Maybe we'll continue this. I think we will continue this. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow or maybe Sunday, but there's more in here that's definitely worth reading. If I had more time, I'd like to go through more of it, but I really don't have the time, unfortunately. So it's why it matters. This is, and I know I say this a lot, right? Voting matters. You got to get out there and you got to vote, folks, right? The only way that you'll ever stop stuff like this from taking effect is by getting out there and supporting people who will prevent it from taking effect. That's what you have to do. We have to stop it from happening. Protesting will not stop this from happening. Direct actions will not stop this from happening, right? Doesn't matter how much you protest. They don't care. They'll send the cops out to beat the shit out of you and kill you. They'll run you over in your car. It doesn't, and with cars and shit like that. And it doesn't matter how many videos you show of people getting their asses kicked, right? Of like Proud Boys and stuff going and brutalizing people. That will not change them. That sort of shame, you know, that used to work 20 years ago, it doesn't work on the right wing anymore. They like it like that. When there's videos of Oath Keepers and Proud Boys and shit going out and beating up trans people, they like that. That's what they want. When there's videos of cops shooting people in the face with tear gas and like, putting people's eyes out with rubber bullets, they like that. That's what they want. All right? They want these things. They cheer that shit on. The right wing, the fucking the Nazis and the right wing people, like, and the fucking alt right, all those people, they share videos of that stuff and laugh at it. They enjoy it. They like, oh, look at this fucking commie getting shot in the face. They like that stuff, right? And the more you allow it to spread, the less effective it becomes. The only way to stop them is at the fucking ballot box. That's it. You know? So yes, vote against, I'm not going to say vote for Democrats, even though they're the only viable option. What I am going to say is vote against Republicans, right? Vote against conservative Democrats too, right? Vote in people, vote in progressives and liberals, people who will stop this shit from fucking taking effect. That's how you got to do it, and you got to do it in every election, everywhere, at every level. You know, it matters. It matters who your mayor is, who your town council, the people on your town fucking council, or your like, city council or whatever, right? It matters who those people are too. It matters who the judges are. A lot of the times you don't even know who they are because you just get a ballot box and it's like, who's this guy? Fucking like whatever. Okay, I'll vote for him. Whatever. It's like that shit matters too. You know, I mean, I at least try to find out who some of the people are before I vote for them. I don't always like. It's not always successful because they don't really have much in the way of like Canada's like um you know news for that when you're voting for a judge or something, right? But still, it matters. Get out there, it matters. Try to get involved. You know, I mean, at your local level, that matters just as much as what you would see at the national level. So, because they are taking it seriously, they are putting people at every level of government. You know, Proud Boys and shit. Like I said before, they're showing up at school, like board meetings, and they're showing up at libraries, and they're showing up at city council meetings and stuff like that, intimidating people, that kind of thing, threatening people, that stuff like that, right? The Republicans are packing all of these like at every level, you know, because if you can control what happens at the local level, then you can control voting at the local level. Then you can control which votes get counted, where drop-off boxes are added, shit like that. And then you can influence the national level and take control of the country. And that's what it's ultimately all about. It's ultimately all about who's going to control the country. And do you want people who believe in freedom and democracy and human rights to control the country? Or do you want people who are going to enforce their will on you and legislate their religion to control the country? Which one of those do you want? That's how we got to start acting, right? Dynacat, wherever corruption is brought up, the R's trot out term limits as a distraction so getting money out of politics won't be the subject. Yes, for sure. I mean, that would be a much better solution, is to prevent, put limits on donations and stuff like that. Get rid of things like, uh, special interest groups and Citizens United, that kind of thing, for sure. I also am in agreement, though, of term limits. I think so. Like, for example, Dianne Feinstein, California. She's been in the Senate like for fucking 30 years or something ridiculous like that. She's like one coconut like away from a fucking you know what I mean? Like she's very got some of that Alzheimer's going there. She shouldn't be in the Senate anymore. And she's just sort of there because, I don't know, people vote for her now because it's tradition, for example. Like, I think I think after, I mean, there are term limits in some regard. I'm not exactly sure. Like, was it 6 years or something like that for House members? Something like that. I think it should just be for everybody, like senators as well. We got term limits for presidents for a reason. That's good. I believe, I support those. I think we should have those for senators. I think we should have those for mayors, for governors, for everybody. It should be the same. Maybe 2 4-year terms for everybody, and then just stagger it in such a way. No problem at all. I mean, how long has Mitch McConnell been in the Senate? What, at least since the 90s, right? Something like that. I would like to see term limits for Supreme Court justices too. Why the fuck do those people get to like stay in power until they're 98 or whatever? Making decisions with like, a political perspective from fucking 40 years ago. Like, no, man, they should. In fact, I don't understand why we don't vote for Supreme Court candidates either. I mean, I don't know. I guess it sort of makes sense that the president appoints them, but I think we should be able to vote for those people too. They affect our lives just as much as like the president or the senators do. I mean, fuck, we've all gotten a quick education about how much the Supreme Court can affect our lives. Why do they not also have? Why are they also not an elected position? That doesn't make any sense either. Danicat, the census is supposed to count people, not citizens. Yeah, it is. And that's why they want to control it, because it allows them to basically set the districts. If depending on which part of the state or whatever has X amount of population, then that's how the districts get set up, and that's why they want to control it. So that's really, I mean, it's all basically in there so that they can. That's another little bit of red meat to their, to themselves. Actually, I don't know, man. It's all bullshit. I'm glad I don't live in Texas. Anyway, I gotta end this. So thank you, Danny Cat, for joining. Yeah, I think it was just me and you I did see through the rest of the stream. It went up to it went up to 7 at some point, but now it's just me and you. So there were a couple more viewers watching before. Anyway, um, yeah, I don't know. I think we will continue this though. I think I do want to read some more of the Texas GOP platform because it really is a good sort of barometer for what the what the GOP as a whole in this country is moving towards. You know what I mean? So anyway, I think though it's time to for us to say goodbye. Everybody out there, please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. I know it's dumb to say that, and you always hear it, but it actually works. When I say like and subscribe, people actually do like and subscribe. It's kind of kind of strange that people sometimes do what you ask them to do like that. I really appreciate it. Everybody who watched, I really appreciate you all. You guys are the reason why I do what I do here. Anyway, if you like what I do and you want to see more, I have a... Give me a second. Let's just move this over here. I have another YouTube channel that you can all check out. It is where I do things like toy reviews and shit like that. Check me out on YouTube videos. If you like what I do and you want to give me money, you can... Oh, wait a minute. That I need to actually go to the store there. Well, anyway, I have also a webcomic. It has ninjas in it and stuff like that. So if you want to see more of my artwork, you can check out my webcomic. I'll put that down in the thing there. I have an SD store. If you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my SD store here. I have prints and comics and that kind of thing. And I also have my DeviantArt site that has all my artwork that goes up there. If you want to see all the artwork I do from the channel and also my webcomic and some other things. Here's one that I did recently. This is, hey, damn it, come on, load. There we go. There's something I did using... This is actually, this is fan art for a guy named Cirrus the Skeptic. If you ever get a chance, check out Cirrus's channel on YouTube. He's really awesome, too. So I drew him like a big demon. So you can kind of see, here's something I did recently. You know, it's hard to make something look horrific and sexy at the same time. Anyhow, so yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you, you know, Dynacat, great to see you. Adversary Fandon, thank you also for joining. I really appreciate it. And then also the other 7 people who popped in and out. Really appreciate you guys. I'm gonna probably most likely do another stream sometime this weekend, but I don't know if it's gonna be tomorrow night or Sunday night. Or Sunday night or maybe Monday. I'm not really sure when. But I am gonna do another one because I want to get back and talk more about the Texas GOP. So I'll put out a notification before we start. You know, like earlier in the day. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much. I am out of here.